Welcome to the 5th episode of the Eastern World 2009 Recaps from Reality TV Warriors. My name is Michael Harmstone, and joining me as always is the Canadian who regularly gets mocked for being so sure of his convictions, Logan Saunders.
Good afternoon.
And the guy who has long told us of his desire for a man in Jordan, David Bindley.
Honk. Good morning.
Good morning. This is the episode we've been waiting for.
Yes, it is.
I have teased this episode for so many years as having probably the challenge that they could never get away with anymore, ever, in the history of TV, ever.
Yeah.
We talk so much about challenges that international versions of shows could never get away with in the US, but I genuinely don't think they could do the Shisha challenge in any other version ever again.
No.
Yeah. Let's destroy your lungs.
I'm sure the Belgians would try.
Yeah, maybe Belgians, maybe Israel on Hammer Rocks Lemillion, and that's about it.
Like, even that weird Ukrainian season probably wouldn't have done this.
No, and they did some really weird shit.
Yeah.
So strap in.
Hmm.
So, previously, the remaining 8 searched chests for cash before bidding it all for luxuries for the evening. Sebastian lost all the money overnight, and then the team lost even more money in a giant game of pinball before they condemned and then lost Paula at the execution. Pieter Jan says from a very windy field that it's almost halfway through the journey and no leader has appeared yet. They didn't spend more money than they needed to for camping equipment, but then frittered it all away in pinball and then let €6,000 disappear from the pot. Paula has left, but after this episode, nothing will be the same anymore.
After the intro, we have Mr. Bean saying, "Man, it was a shock to lose Paula. She seemed to have such control of the game." And Sebastian says, "Oh, yeah, she was a worthy opponent." And they're being completely deadpanned about this. They're not...
That was Dennis, I think, wasn't it?
Or maybe... Was it
Dennis was happy because it was like one less suspect for him to get confused by.
Yeah, and one less good player in the game.
Yeah.
I was like, where did this narrative come from? Haven't they all just been trolling Paula for 4 straight episodes? And now it's, oh man, she was a formidable opponent. She was a Goliath in this game.
Well, this is the thing that I talked about last week. They seem to be delaying the eulogies for everyone until the next episode. And it's really weird. Because, being perfectly honest, the first 3 people to go this season are very forgettable.
I don't know if it's production saying, okay, guys, I know you want to make fun of Paula right now, but you have the night to compose yourself, and tomorrow morning when you record your confessionals, you got to be really, you got to put on an act and be really look like you're really sincere when talking about the eliminated player, even if it's Paula.
I mean, I would argue that probably Froukje is also fairly useless, so it's a good boot order for this season so far, at least as of the end of this episode.
Yeah, I think somebody else. I think the confessional went on air, but somebody else said, "Oh yeah, Paula." Everyone just thought Paula already had her name written on the check at the end of the season, and now they had to put whiteout on the check. That's how certain we all were that she was going to win this game.
She was already thinking of what charity to donate her winnings to. And this was years before Rocky.
Yeah. Turns out the only thing she had her name written on was all of those votes last week.
Yeah. With weird Delta symbols everywhere. And they're actually given a hotel to stay in Port Rush. John says it was a shot losing Paula as she didn't get caught in the chaos of the group. She seemed in control. Dennis thought she played well and was suspicious from day one, so he appreciates her going as a suspect and as a good player he doesn't have to play against. Vivian says the group feels so much smaller, now 3 people have left. I'm not sure these 3 people took up a lot of space, to be honest.
No.
And they find an envelope on a picnic table telling them to form a group of 2 people who they trust with their lives, and they decide to pick Vivienne and John.
I always trust Mr. Bean with my life.
And they will lead the rest of the group through Dunluce Castle, past the numerous snipers, and to bags of money. Whatever they collect will be put into the pots, and they get the camera views of what the snipers can see and a map. Each person is allowed to take 1 bag of money over the bridge, which then banks it for the pots. And what we didn't see in this episode was everyone going absolutely apeshit because they got to laser game.
I will say putting John and Vivian in charge is at least a saner idea than picking Sebastian again.
Yes, especially given how useless he was at protecting any money himself.
Yeah. And I don't think it's a coincidence that, you put somebody else in charge and then they suddenly win some money in one of these games.
Yeah, another recurring theme this season. We didn't really find out how much this challenge was worth, but I'm assuming it was a bag of 500, a bag of 1,000, a bag of 1,500, 2,000, and 2,500. So 7,500 is what I've put mine down as. The interesting thing is, obviously, I suspect if they'd not lost so much money last episode, those bags would have been a little bit smaller.
They definitely threw some money at them this week.
There is no way that this sort of a challenge is ever normally worth €7,500.
No, this is expensive, even for this era when they actually had a budget for the prize. This is expensive.
Yeah, bear in mind that €7,500 is almost identical to how much was earned in the entire season in Vidum 25. So Anik leads the group towards the first bag, and more importantly, out of the sniper's range. Vivienne spots the bag hiding behind a rock, and Dennis grabs it, and it contains €2,500.
I just love that somehow Vivienne was able to see that bag from the castle, even though it was behind a rock, covered by weeds, and like blended in with the landscape as well. Like, I don't know how she did that.
And she was so much further than everyone else.
Yeah.
Maybe she's good friends with Louis and Michael from Amazing Race 16 and has that eagle eye.
Yeah, maybe. Froukje and Rick go rogue and make a break for it and somehow don't get caught. And Rick says that for a moment you're a 12-year-old boy playing cowboy.
I remember playing cowboy and running through a Northern Irish castle.
Well, it would be very on brand for you to have a memory as a child of being tied up.
I don't even know how to follow that.
No, neither do I. So I'm just going to say that, like, whoever decided to dress up the laser guns as actual sniper rifles needs a promotion.
I think they just played 007 GoldenEye while they were planning this challenge.
Yeah, what you can't see is that Froukje had a special mission to basically act as Natalia and be completely useless. Just constantly getting herself into scrapes, and you have to get her out of them. And fun fact, they did end the episode with the snipers being crushed by a giant satellite dish.
Yeah.
Oh. That's exciting. And next week we're going to eulogize them.
For Northern Ireland, Alex?
Out of interest, have you guys played the GoldenEye remake?
On Wii?
Remake.
The remake? Yes. Yeah, a long time ago, but yes, I did.
No.
It was like 2007. But my favourite part of the GoldenEye remake was the fact that Dame Judi Dench as M could not pronounce Janus. She called him Janus throughout the entire game. And all me and my brother could do was just do impressions of Janus from Friends. Every time you had a briefing from DJD going, "The Snap 007, Janice is in the observatory." You just go, "Oh my god!" So it's all I could think of when GoldenEye's mentioned now. I think it is on Virtual Console on the Switch actually, but it's all I can think of with whenever GoldenEye's mentioned is just Janice from Friends going, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, if Chandler was on this season, they would all be going to Yemen instead of Jordan.
Well, they nearly guessed Yemen.
Yeah, Yemen was about the only Middle East country they didn't guess.
I mean, they guessed they were going to Iraq in 2009.
2008?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure Vidum would have gone down really well in Syria.
In 2008, Syria.
Yeah. This is like prime War on Terror era. So, I mean, the fact that they're going to the Middle East on Vidum itself is pretty ballsy.
Yeah.
Arguably a safer bit of the Middle East, but still.
I was just trying to think where, in 2008, where Amazing Race would have gone in the Middle East. Just UAE, Oman, Kuwait?
Would have been about season 11,
12.
Season 12. Kuwait? Was that around that time?
Yeah,
Kuwait was season 10, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Kuwait was
so that
season
would have
10,
been
yeah.
2006, I think.
Yeah, I started watching with season 12 in about 2007, I think, so.
Yeah, because I know All Stars aired in 2007.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember, this is going to sound like the weirdest logic, but I remember 16 aired at the start of 2010 because they gave away the prize to Whistler.
Yeah.
And they basically made a big deal about like you can try the skeleton ramp or whatever. Basically, like the day after the skeleton athlete died, and they didn't think to edit that out.
Yeah, I don't think Amazing Race did any Middle Eastern visits around that time.
No.
Presumably because everyone was being bombed to shit.
Yeah.
I'm glad that Vidum Georgia didn't do any luge or skeleton tasks.
Would have been slightly bad taste. You've not been to Jordan, have you, Saunders?
I've not been to Jordan, but after watching this episode, it put it back on my radar again.
Yeah.
I have also not been to Jordan, but my phone thinks I have.
Actually, my phone thinks I have too, because I was in the Dead Sea. Were you also in the Dead Sea, Michael?
I was also in the Dead Sea.
And that's when you got the notifications that's about Jordan?
Well, when I did my trip to Israel and Cyprus and Turkey and Greece, I did do a trip to Masada and the Dead Sea, and it was a very long day. We were driving back from the Dead Sea, absolutely knackered, and my phone did ping saying, "Welcome to Jordan," even though we didn't cross the border. However, when I got home, I found out that my phone company did try and charge me for using data in Jordan, even though my data wasn't switched on.
Odd.
Yes, very odd. I had to set them right on that because I didn't even turn my data on, even in Israel, where it wasn't included in my tariff either.
Hmm.
Yeah, because I did the Masada and Dead Sea tour too, and when we were at the Dead Sea, that's when my phone said, "Oh, welcome to Jordan." And then I'm thinking, does this count? No, it does not.
Yeah, just as a complete aside, Masada and the Dead Sea is one of the coolest tours I've ever done. It was so cool. Anyway, back to this episode. Froukje spots the sniper and says he can either hit them or the other group, so they need to run at the same time. Sebastian makes a run for it and manages to get to safety, unlike Anik, who is the first to be shot and eliminated from the game. Froukje finds her bag on the stairs, but in the process loses Rick. It's worth €500, and Rick does slip about 3 or 4 times going into a cave, where he finds €1,000.
He looks like a giraffe on roller skates.
It is such a dick move to put the bag at the bottom of a very slippery cave.
I mean, there is precedent because, like the previous season, they did a challenge where it was basically like, "Oh, you need to collect cards for a poker hand." They gave you a map and showed you where they were. Didn't tell them it was in a cenote.
Of course.
Yeah, so you basically had to run across the top to find the entrance hole, and then go down and then swim through the cenote to dive for the cards. So, like, there is precedent, but this is just silly, and I love it.
Imagine them doing this challenge with all the old people from Mexico too.
Rianne?
Can you imagine Rianne having to explore a slippery cave?
Team Rianne is blasting off again.
She would have broken something. And ironically, this would have been the challenge with Sniper Bitch in it.
Also, like, I love that Sebastian ends up running so far away from the castle, he somehow ends up back in the parking lot. And they just leave it in the episode.
I love how this is the only laser game in Vidum history where you can literally see the main road. You can literally see the bounds of this location because they run up to a Land Rover.
I think that's kind of why they go to doing it at night after this. Because, this one's close to the road, and then Holland Village, they're doing it in daytime because it's, an enclosed park. They can do that. But then basically every single one after that until, like, South Africa a couple of years ago, every single one of them is at night.
If this was with the Vidum Mexico 2 contestants, and then you have Rianne slipping, they would have to change it to Rosario poking Rianne with a stick. Now do Macarena. Now do Macarena. Why aren't you doing Macarena?
You just got your own at the bottom of the slippery cave going, Rosario!
Yeah. And he's never heard from again. So we have 3 medical evacuations. Babs, you get to come back for a 4th time this season. Hopefully you catch on to who the mole is. Oh, you guessed Rosario. Oh, that's great.
That's unfortunate.
We'll give you a hint. The first 2 letters of the mole's name is A and N. Oh, no. You got executed somehow. You thought the mole was Anderson Cooper based on that hint. Sorry, Babs.
How do you feel about this challenge?
It's so transparently, we need to give you some money so you've got literally anything in the pot. But it's kind of fun, but it's also completely and utterly not Crusader themed.
Yeah.
I didn't see a single cross.
Yeah, and not to fact check Peter Jan Hagens of all people, but like he says this castle was where the Crusaders left from. This castle wasn't even built during the Crusades.
Yeah, quite famously, they did leave via the Atlantic Ocean to get to the Crusades, but
Yeah,
as much as we don't want to fact check Peter Jan Hagens, this one's tenuous.
yeah, like this is a good challenge. Like it's a good location for a challenge.
Yeah.
And this is a good challenge, but I think the excessive prize kind of undermines it a little bit.
Yeah, I see why they had to do the excessive prize, but especially looking at it through a more modern lens of that is literally how much the pot ends up being is the maximum they can get for this challenge.
Yeah,
You go, wow, that's quite excessive.
yeah. Oh, nowadays they just leave it at you got 3,600. Oh, you're above average. It's time for a pot train.
Yeah, this bag's worth €10. This bag's worth 20. This bag's worth 30. This one's worth 40, and this one's worth 50.
And then this one, if you don't get it back in time, we take out €2,000.
Congratulations, you could earn €150 with this challenge, and it's all in mole coins.
I don't remember any other laser game where the snipers had this long of a range for being able to shoot at contestants.
No, I think this is a lot smaller area than it looks on television, but
Yeah.
it is quite a long range for them.
I thought it was neat that they actually got to see the cameras for the challenge were in the form of the sniper scope.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
element of the challenge that I love the most. But also, I do have to say, this challenge could have been done in another place than Northern Ireland. Our usual
Yeah.
check mark of a really good challenge is it can't be done anywhere else, and certainly coming up in Jordan, there's a lot of challenges that can't be done anywhere else. This one, I think you could have kind of transplanted to any castle, and it still would have
Yeah.
worked.
To be fair, like there's a lot of challenges in Jordan you can't do anywhere else. There is also a trip to a supermarket.
Yes. You could do that in Greece, I suppose.
Yeah, I cannot wait to discuss how stupid that challenge is. I like that they've got the sniper scope cameras. I think it's funny that they don't bother using it half the time and they just shout out the window.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a whole recurring theme for this episode is that they just keep ditching walkie-talkies and just resort to screaming at each other. It's like Paula traumatized them with using walkie-talkies for the whole rest of the season.
So Dennis and Sebastian find the bridge, but there is one more sniper guarding it. Froukje gets shot running back down the stairs, as does Rick, who's just sat there waiting to be shot, let's be honest. And Sebastian gets past the sniper, but Dennis is left behind. He sprints, banking €2,500 of 7.5 of the challenge, and Sebastian actually thought there would be another bag after the bridge because he missed the fact that John and Vivian told him that once you reach the bridge, you can't go back.
Sebastian screws a lot of things up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is not the type to pay attention to detail throughout the season.
That is very true.
Mm.
So Pieter Jan congratulates them for actually making any money this challenge and tells them it was their last assignment in Northern Ireland, as tomorrow they are following the path of the Crusaders. Not that any of them know where the Crusaders actually went.
And, not that it's even possible for the Crusaders to have gone to Jordan with their boats.
No.
Because Jordan is landlocked.
Yes, it is. In fact, the only bit of it that has any major water on the border is the Dead Sea.
Salty.
Very salty. You could technically float from where I was in Israel to Jordan. It's about 2 miles across, I think. It would not have been very pleasant to do.
I think we were at the exact same beach on the Dead Sea, Michael.
Probably. There's a lot of hotels down there. We were based at one of them. But I really wouldn't be surprised if we were on the exact same beach, to be honest.
I loved it, throughout this entire episode, Pieter Jan is really excited by the history of these places, with the Crusaders and with the Romans later on. And with this bit, he goes on about, we're going to follow the Crusaders, and everybody cheers, and then just immediately realizes they don't know what the fuck the Crusaders are, and it's like, wait, what? Which, is fair because why would you think the Crusaders are the sort of thing that's going to make Dutch people excited?
We're going to go where the Crusaders went. Wee, yeah, woo. Yep, they went to the arcade.
It is very interesting they did pick Jordan as location because, as we've said, it's more of a safe country, certainly in terms of Middle East, and certainly in terms of if they wanted to do this whole Crusade theme, I suspect they probably wanted Turkey first because that's more famous for crusades.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm just looking at the UK government advice for Jordan, and it still says women travellers are often harassed and sexually assaulted by men. Take care when walking or travelling alone. That sort of thing. Big threat of terrorism. It's not exactly a 100% safe country, I would say, for them to pick. It's not on the level of literal war zone El Salvador, but it's certainly not the safest country they've picked.
No. Like, I like the choice. Like, I'm not going to criticize them for the choice. I wonder maybe if it would have been better if, like, it was a whole season in Jordan and then, save Northern Ireland for something else. But I think we're going to have some fun with Jordan in the next few weeks.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm not knocking the choice of Jordan at all, but it's certainly one of those choices where you go, really, they did that one? Because Amazing Race has only just been to Jordan, I think.
They kept calling it the Kingdom of Jordan.
I don't know why Phil keeps doing that lately. Like, because he seems to really, all of a sudden, just seems to really give a shit about which countries are kingdoms, which countries are republics, all of that sort of shit. And, like, nobody is interested by it.
Yeah, they went, I seem to remember they went all the way to Petra to do a slide puzzle.
Yeah.
And not spoiling anything, but when this season goes to Petra, they do not do a slide puzzle.
What? They do something more culturally relevant?
Yes, they go to a supermarket.
Yeah. When this season goes to Petra, they do something at least more interesting than a slide puzzle, especially given our history with slide puzzles, Saunders.
I wish when Pieter Jan said, "Oh, we're following the path of the Crusaders," and they all cheered like, "Wait, I think the Crusaders went out for ice cream. I think that's where they went." I think that maybe was why the contestants were cheering.
I wish when he said, "Oh yeah, we're following the path of the Crusaders," he then followed it with, "Right, get your walking boots on. This is going to take a few months."
Only the mole knew where we were going.
And you can tell this is a really old season by this show standards because they don't mention Game of Thrones once when they're in Northern Ireland, even though like this castle was one of the castles they used.
Yeah, if this was done in modern day Vidum, they would have done an entire episode on Game of Thrones with the music, with someone having to sit on the throne.
Oh god, can you imagine Belfast doing a season in Northern Ireland?
I think, as much as I love Northern Ireland, I think the weather would be a little too miserable for them, especially with the time of year they go.
Yeah.
But I think they'd have a lot of fun with doing the Game of Thrones motifs. I would love just a promo picture of Gilles sitting on the throne, I'll be honest.
A game of moles.
Like, can you imagine him just kind of chilling on the throne of Westeros? That would be pretty cool. Does make me laugh that when Queen Elizabeth did the Game of Thrones set tour, she refused to sit on the throne because traditionally the monarch does not sit on another country's throne, so she extended it to Westeros. So they suggest that they could be going to that notoriously safe list of countries to film in: Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Israel, or Syria.
Out of those 5, which one do you think you would most like to see this show go to?
Most like to see them do Turkey, because at least Turkey's safe.
Yeah, like I'm kind of fascinated by the idea of them doing a season in Iran, but Turkey is the obvious safe one.
Turkey's the obvious safe one. I think there would be a lot of entertainment in Belgium doing an entire season touring Saddam Hussein's palaces. I think Iran would be off the table because they still would not do an all-male season. I think Syria would be far too dangerous, and Israel certainly far too dangerous at the moment.
Oh god, Belgium would do a coffin escape room in Saddam Hussein's little hidey hole, wouldn't they?
Absolutely.
Followed by a dental checkup.
I think actually in terms of interesting choices on that list, 2 stand out to me, which would be Turkey and Israel. Belgium would do an amazing season in Israel. Regardless of your thoughts on Israel generally, holy shit, them doing an execution at Masada, them doing something with the Dead Sea, them probably doing a Stations of the Cross thing in the old town of Jerusalem, that would be right up their street. But obviously it's not safe to do at the moment.
Yeah, Turkey, you would have Istanbul and Cappadocia for sure as 2 locations. I've been to both places, and then for like a coastal beach area, you'd have Antalya.
Izmir as well, or doing something in Ephesus. They'd love doing something in the amphitheater at Ephesus, I suspect.
Oh, they'd for sure also use Troy.
Yeah. I will say that a few weeks ago, as of the time of filming, The Apprentice UK did do its tourism episode in Turkey. So they sent them to Cappadocia and somewhere else. I can't remember where. It wasn't Istanbul, but yeah, they did an entire episode in Turkey.
Yeah, if anybody else is curious about where to go to Turkey, I 1000% recommend going to Cappadocia. One of the coolest places I've been to.
Unsurprisingly, when they went to Cappadocia, they did do a hot air balloon ride.
Yeah.
I'm sort of amazed. Amazing Race Australia's been to Turkey twice and not done Gallipoli yet.
Well, then they're not as sort of nationalistic as Amazing Race Canada are.
Yeah.
Not that that was a bad thing in terms of their France visit, because, that was really, really good theming and one of the few episodes of Amazing Race Canada that is an A-tier one. But yeah, I don't think they're as blatantly nationalistic. Certainly in the season that's going to be coming up. I suspect Amazing Race Canada, which hasn't started filming yet, is going to be unbearable.
Oh, I can't even wait for that on social media. Oh, elbows up, elbows up, elbows up. Hashtag Canada's not for sale. 20,000 sponsors saying we are proudly Canadian owned, or we're proudly operated in Canada. 5 legs in Toronto, 4 legs in Vancouver, finish line in Calgary. Yeah, what a gem of a season that's going to fucking be.
I suppose the good news is they can't get the Hudson's Bay sponsorship anymore.
People were going to the store to buy the Hudson's Bay like blankets or placemats or something because it's sort of a rare collector's item. But the funny thing is, like, if you go into Hudson's Bay right now, with even though they're doing 50 or 60% off at this point, it's still twice as expensive to buy equivalent things at any other store in town. It's like that's why they went out of business, because they charge like 3 times as much for every single item that they sell. And all the reviews for this store, if you go on like Google Maps reviews for all the different Hudson's Bay stores, it's just all the reviews are, this store is empty, this store is empty, this store only had one cashier working. Gee, I wonder why.
It's basically the same reason why so many American fast food places try and come to Australia and then fold within about 18 months. Because, like, they have to make the food, expensive because of the exchange rate. But the problem is people aren't going to pay twice as much for a burger that's a third of the quality. And, like, every single, I think, aside from, the really big obvious ones like McDonald's and Pizza Hut, basically all of, like, the second tier ones really do not survive here.
Hungry Jacks?
Hungry Jack's kind of like it's nobody's first choice. I think probably the polite way of saying it. Everybody was being sort of very golf clappy when it was a sponsor on Australian Survivor that time.
Yeah, it is interesting because when we were in Canada, we very much enjoyed Canadian unique brand, the Keg, which is a brand of steakhouses. But they specifically do not go anywhere in the world apart from Canada and small bits of America where they can guarantee the quality of the meat, because they can't guarantee the quality of the meat. Everything comes from Alberta, the beef, apart from the stores that are in like Phoenix and stuff where they have beef around that they can deal with. But it has not spread around the world as a result of that, and they've not even tried. Unlike Tim Hortons, which is basically taken over the UK now. There is a ludicrous amount of Tim Hortons in the UK now. Not that I'm complaining. So, Pieter Jan has his own Gilles showing off moment when he welcomes them in fluent Arabic. And Froukje guessed Jordan on the bus, apparently, and her intuition has not let her down, she says. Come back to that at the end of the episode.
I've never been wrong once.
I'm not sure that was fluent Arabic as much as it was he was just reciting the list of ingredients for the challenge.
No, he did welcome them in Arabic first.
Huh.
He welcomed them in Arabic, then we got the Froukje gloating that she guessed Jordan, which is the only thing she gets right this episode, and then we got him giving the list of ingredients.
Yeah, no, he gives the list twice. The first time it's like a proper list, and then the second time he like patronizes them and basically makes like he's coming up with the list off the top of his head again.
All right. Maybe I misinterpreted them. I thought he was just welcoming them.
Also, like they spent ever on the establishing shots of Amman.
It's like a minute of 50 minutes of this episode. Especially as they don't tell you where it is. It's just, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we're following the path of the Crusader, and then it's just generic Middle East B-roll for a good 60 to 90 seconds.
Yeah, it's like 90 seconds of favela-like buildings, a woman in a niqab, Arabic text on a billboard, etc., without telling anyone where they are until all of a sudden you see Pieter Jan in the market.
Yeah, and even then, I don't think he confirms it. I think it only confirms it after Froukje's already said it.
Yeah, and I love that they build up the mystery of this, even though we see in the flashback they flew on Royal Jordanian to Amman.
Which, again, would not have been a direct flight from Belfast.
No.
I haven't looked this up, but I'm going to guess that they probably had to change at Heathrow, which brings its own issues.
Yeah, that minute of establishing shots was great. They had a shot of the Great Pyramids, then, Saddam Hussein's palaces, then the Kaaba, and shots around Jordan. I'm thinking, yeah, they really just did a whole minute of Middle Eastern B-roll. Could have been anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that gave it away was that there was a shot of that amusement park in Oman with the creepy guards.
Yeah. Interestingly, it's Gatwick, Heathrow, Stansted, Manchester are the only UK airports that they've flown with Royal Jordanian from.
Huh.
It might have been Dublin.
That would make sense.
Because they used to fly from Dublin and Shannon.
Yeah.
So it might have been one of the Irish airports rather than Heathrow. But, still, it wasn't from Belfast.
Yeah. I love the idea that they've basically just driven through a country and they're just not shown it at all in the episode.
Yeah, it's just easier.
I mean, it's probably the best way to experience Ireland.
If it was Dublin, then they probably drove them to Dublin rather than flew them there. You probably can fly between Belfast and Dublin. I don't think it'll be a particularly long flight, but it looked like they were actually at the check-in desk, which wouldn't have been the case if they were transferring.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely didn't get a flight from Belfast to Dublin. If you try Googling Belfast to Dublin flight, the suggested thing that comes up is with British Airways, 11 and a half hours connecting.
Are they connecting through Larnaca?
So the top departing flight is KLM, 5 hours stopping in Amsterdam. So you fly to Amsterdam from Belfast and then fly back to Dublin. There's only 2 hours on the train. The BA one is via London City Airport. So again, you fly to London to fly back to Dublin.
Yeah. Is there a flight from El Salvador to Nicaragua?
Probably, because they're much larger than Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
Yes, there is. It's a 50-minute flight.
Huh.
Must be pricey.
£312 return.
Yeah, I had a feeling.
Sebastian says that he's getting visions of doing crazy stuff in the desert involving camels and shisha.
But enough about his personal life.
Or a camel smoking shisha.
One of those is going to become very prophetic. And PCN tells him to go shopping in the market with 10 dinar and get the 7 items on his shopping list in Arabic, of course. And Sebastian has the foresight to write down the pronunciations and find someone to translate them into English. I love how this is basically just a distraction. There is no real point to this.
No, it's a nice idea to go and make them shop in a market for the things they're going to use in the challenge later, but there's not really any interesting ways for it to be sabotaged. It's like,
Yeah.
well, either you end up with the item or you don't. Those are the only two options, and the market is small enough, and they speak enough English in that there's not really any way you can't end up with the items as well.
Yeah. The interesting bit, however, is the second part of this challenge, which is batshit insane. So Pieter Jan meets them at a shisha bar, and now they must pair the fruits that they bought, or the flavours that they bought, because it includes mint, with the flavours in the shisha pipes. Each correct pair is worth €250, and there are 3 pipes that are not paired. And as we saw last week, only Sebastian smokes, so everyone else has a little bit of a learning curve as to how to smoke shisha. Now, I'm assuming neither of you have Googled this. How bad do you think shisha is for you?
I remember researching it before. It's supposed to be 2 or 3 times worse for you compared to smoking cigarettes, apparently.
Oh no, it isn't, Saunders. Oh no. According to the British Heart Foundation, in a shisha session which lasts about 20 to 80 minutes, a shisha smoker can inhale the same amount of smoke as a cigarette smoker consuming over 100 cigarettes.
Wow.
That's interesting to note when countries where shisha is popular that alcohol is banned, and when I was in Brunei, both alcohol and cigarettes were banned. But yet shisha bars are really popular, and that's probably worse for your health overall compared to being a frequent user of both combined.
Shisha is almost the worst thing that you can do for your lungs.
And in turn for your whole body, pretty much.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think sticking hooks in your back with limes attached is probably worse for your body.
Yeah, aside from that, second worst thing you can do for your body.
Because the other bit, aside from all the, tobacco and nicotine and all that shit, is the fact that it's burnt using charcoal or wood cinders, exposing users to a high level of carbon monoxide as well.
Oh wow.
Actually, it's the third worst thing you can do for your body. I forgot the other one. The other one is engaging in intercourse with Tigo. So third worst thing you can do for your body.
Genuinely, if you didn't say that, I was going to be like a fourth worst Tigo.
Yeah, it's actually the fourth worst because you've also got to include running on a lava field as an old woman. Or fifth, actually, because you got to include old women sitting down as well. So yeah, shisha, terrible for you.
That's the point.
Yeah, this is a PSA from us. Don't do shisha, kids.
Yeah.
If there's anything we could teach you, it's that shisha, not great for your health.
Yeah, 2008 was a very different time. You had Fred Flintstone doing commercials of him smoking shisha.
And I also love, as I said last week, that this is the very first challenge after they leave the UK where you couldn't even smoke indoors after the 1st of July 2007. Literally, the first thing they do after they get out of a country with a smoking ban is take them to do something that is 100 to 200 times worse than smoking.
Well, they got to make up for it.
And it's a secretively nasty challenge, this, because as they allude to at the end of the challenge, if you smoke so much, your taste buds go a bit funny and everything tastes the same.
Yeah, I like how Sebastian's the only smoker in the group, and he said, yeah, it's true, I am the only smoker in the group, but because I smoke, my taste buds are slowly dying. Boys and girls, my body is decaying before your eyes.
It's Gordon Ramsay's favourite thing to say in Hell's Kitchen when they do the blind taste test is you can always tell who the chefs are who smoke because they always do badly on the taste test because they can't taste anything other than burnt.
And I like how Mr. Bean, this is just so far away from his lifestyle, where it's like the episode is Mr. Bean Gets Stoned, where he says, I got stoned like a hippie? What's the word I'm looking for?
But, I mean, aside from all the obvious stuff with shisha, and I don't want to harp on this too much, but certainly almost 5 years to the day from the COVID lockdown starting in the UK, it's not a great look to see people sharing pipes either. I googled earlier how bad is shisha, and one of the AI things that's come up is shisha smoking can also increase the risk of spreading infections, including coronavirus and other diseases such as herpes, hepatitis, and TB.
I'll just stick it in your mouth and blow, Michael.
In summary, we should all be more Bindles and just stick it in our mouths and blow.
I like how everyone was coughing, trying to smoke shisha like it was a Wiz Khalifa music video.
Even though it's very much part of the culture of that part of the world, even though it was 2008, I still kind of can't believe that they did this challenge.
Yeah. I mean, this is like going to the Netherlands and doing a challenge about Christmas with their weird blackface thing for some reason.
Zwart Piet.
Yeah.
Even in 2008 when this filmed, it's not a good look.
No.
But it's funny to see them just all struggle like they can't figure out the technique at all, where they're told, exhale through your nose, exhale through your nose. They're like, how do I inhale and exhale this?
But assuming that they got like 30 minutes to do this, they must have all been having massive come downs afterwards. Because essentially smoked about 100 to 200 cigarettes worth of nicotine in 30 minutes. And then the next few days, they would have been jonesing for a fix.
Yeah. And,
Everyone must have been so irritable, genuinely.
And also, like, we established in the next challenge that it's like 40 degrees in Amman this day.
Yeah.
So like, they would have been struggling to breathe anyway.
Yeah. All jokes aside, they would have genuinely been coming down from nicotine addiction for the next few days after this challenge, I suspect.
It's like the Vietnam War veterans, right? Where they all got hooked onto cocaine while they were serving in the Vietnam War. Then as soon as they got home, they didn't have that addiction anymore. Because it was just a psychological thing where because they were physically there in Vietnam, that's why they were addicted, because it got us tied into their whole daily routine when fighting there.
Yeah, like, as much as obviously we're trying to make light of this, they genuinely put people's health at risk during this challenge.
Yeah.
It's the type of challenge only Pieter Jan hosted season could get away with.
Yeah.
Yeah. The funniest thing to me is, like, it's not even a particularly good challenge. Like, because there's like a little bit of an argument over which one's watermelon, which one's strawberry. But otherwise, they pretty much all agree on all of them. And we don't really have any way of knowing how close they are to being right until the end of the challenge, where Pieter Jan's lifting up the plates.
Yeah. It's a interesting, challenging concept, but there is no play-along ability for fairly obvious reasons unless they sent scratch and sniff cards out with this episode. Smoke and sniff, I suppose. But genuinely, I don't understand what went through their heads to go, you know what? Let's make them do shisha straight away. Nuts, is all I have to say. And that wasn't even one of the flavours.
But I'd still smoke it. Aren't you regretting letting me on this podcast now?
Every day. Even days we don't record.
And we can't play along with this challenge. We're not at smell-o-vision levels yet for TV, like from Futurama.
Now, this is what I mean. Like, unless they sent out smoke and sniff cards, there is no way to play along with this challenge as a viewer. Anything else you want to say about the actual minutiae of this challenge, or?
Nah.
Good. So Pieter Jan returns and mocks Anik for being so sure, but she is right. And they get 6 of the 7 correct, missing only strawberry, for a total of 1,500 euros of 1,750 for the challenge. And they've also decided to swap Sebastian as treasurer for Rick. Pieter Jan tells us that everyone was shocked that they moved, apart from one person, of course. It's a good start to Jordan for the group, but not for Sebastian, who nobody trusts with the pot anymore. The real question is whether Rick is to be trusted. One more assignment remains, for one person will go home. And they are driven to an amphitheatre for the final assignment, and Pieter Jan tells them that it's the perfect place for a game of goose. And they must form 2 teams of 3 people, and Froukje is the one left over.
I really wish this was Duck Duck Goose. I was so disappointed.
I mean, keeping with the theme of Pieter Jan being excited by history but lousy at history, like, they build up the Game of the Goose as like this old Dutch game. But I'm like, isn't it Italian? Like, isn't it sort of famously like 15th century Italian or something?
Do we need a Phil Keoghan style fact check at this point?
I hear Jordan was the oldest kingdom in the world.
Yeah. And they invented democracy.
And shisha.
So they can earn money by answering questions, but the team who reaches the finish first will lose all their money, but gain an exemption. Each team must pick one strategist, and whatever the losing team earn goes into the pot. And they pick Sebastian and Dennis as their strategists, leaving John and Anik and Rick and Vivienne as the pawns. Quick admin question. Do we know what the maximum for this challenge is?
No idea.
No. It's 250 per question. So you got to work out, how many question tiles there were, times 2 members, and then plus all of the money that's on the board times 2. So whatever that would work out to.
I've no idea what it ends up being, I'll be perfectly honest.
No, I don't care enough to work it out.
5,000.
Yeah, we'll say 5,000. Congrats, Saunders. It's about right, which is all that matters.
Okay, it's a nice idea for a challenge. I think the money thing feels like they decided to do the challenge before they worked out how to make the money work, so they've just added it in after the fact and tried to retrofit it.
Yeah.
But like the idea of, a board game where one of the winners gets an exemption, like, that's okay.
I do like the idea of the losing team's money goes into the pot because it then forces people to collaborate a bit more rather than just being everyone being selfish.
If it wasn't for the 6K being deducted, I bet the other twist would have been the winning team's money gets deducted from the pot.
Yeah, that might have made it more interesting. I suppose the good news is for the contestants, at least this wasn't as bad as like the Spanish game show that was built on the idea of the Game of the Goose. Because then we would have had like spaces with like, disgusting challenges or like traumatic head shaving or like all of that sort of stuff. And instead we just get things like asking Anik who Anik picked on that test when she got the red screen. Like that's really as nasty as this gets.
It was a really good idea, though, to be fair.
Yeah. And I just love that it's like Anik who gets that question as well. Like it would have been one thing if it was like, they asked, I don't know, John or Vivian. It would have been one thing if like they'd asked them, who Anik picked, and then just sort of said, okay, you got it right or you got it wrong or whatever. But the fact that they ask it to Anik herself, that's what makes it funny.
I'm looking up the Spanish game show based on Game of the Goose right now, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
This space was next to a mud pit. Landing here resulted in the contestant having to perform a stunt in the mud while being hindered by a female mud wrestler, 2 in the 3rd season.
Yeah.
Landing here resulted in the contestant having to spin a wheel to determine which part of his or her body got the show's goose head logo painted on it. The spaces on the wheel were arm, back, chest, stomach, and bottom.
Have you not heard of this show before, Michael?
I have not.
Oh.
The contestant was seated in a barber's chair at this space and had to answer 3 questions, the last of which was always impossible to answer in the 5 seconds allotted. Getting any question wrong resulted in the player receiving a severe haircut by a deranged barber.
Yeah.
Did the barber smoke shisha?
Any contestant who landed here had to take a seat at the mock Chinese restaurant. The waiter, in quotation marks, brought out a disgusting food, such as a whole rat cooked in sweet and sour sauce, and the contestant had to at least sample the food to avoid losing all his money.
This show sounds silly.
Yeah, like this is Hummerots as a studio game show, pretty much.
Yeah. So, where were we? So Vivian's first to answer a question and is asked what the recurring theme of Sebastian's tattoos is, and she's correct that it's circles. And it gets a question about the names of the cranes in Belfast wrong. Rick doesn't believe John when he says his full name, which is 5 words.
Is he Mexican?
No, I remember looking him up on Wikipedia a few weeks ago when we were discussing whether he did voice Mr. Bean or not. And yeah, his name is ridiculously long.
Is it longer than the name of Bangkok?
It is not. He could fit one name on each of the boxes, though.
I love that Rick thinks his line is like that's the sort of thing you can pass off as an honest mistake on this show.
Well, I presume that what he thought John was going to do was switch 2 of the names around or something.
Yeah. But, like, how would you get from John, what's your name, to John saying his name, so like, oh, you got it wrong, and then, like, not have everyone suspect you for that?
Yeah. So, as we said, Anik is asked who she put for question 20 when she got the red screen, and she lies and says it was Vivian, she thinks. Dennis's team is the first to reach the finish, bankrupting them, but meaning that they earn €1,350 of 5,000 for the challenge, 5,350 of 14,250 for the episode, and €8,950 of 70,250 euros for the season so far.
Can I just say, Sebastian is a weird, weird man. At one point, like, he rolls the number he needs, and then he just stops and tweaks his nipples for some reason.
I have that in my notes too. Mr. Bean crosses the finish line as Sebastian pinches his own nipples. I'm like, man, that dude's at half-mast right now.
Well, the weird thing is, I think we found out a few weeks ago that he has his nipple pierced as well.
Oh. I mean, it's on brand for him.
I'm not sure actually how much of his nipple he would have been tweaking. And that's not a sentence I thought I'd be saying on a Monday evening, I'll be honest.
That is a sentence I thought you would be saying on a Monday evening.
And I like how Vivian was asked about what's the name of the Jordanian king, and she says, I don't know, I guess King Muhammad. And then somebody else just says, no, idiot, it's Abdullah. How did you not know it's King Abdullah? Duh.
I think my favourite thing about this entire challenge is they stick Froukje on a random space to try and at least give her a chance to get in the challenge. If somebody else lands on it, they switch with her. And then just nobody goes anywhere near her. And like everybody just makes fun of her when they go past.
Yeah. Poor Froukje.
Yeah. The only thing that would have made it funnier is if it was Paula.
Yeah, Paula comes back as a surprise. She can get back in the game if people swap with her. So whoever from Dennis's team rolls a 6 first wins the exemption. And Dennis gets it immediately.
What is this, Survivor 48? Now we're rolling dice to see who gets an exemption? At least they weren't rolling dice to see who would lose a point on the quiz, and then it would be full on Survivor 48 parallels.
I just love that it's built up as to, who's going to win the exemption? And then Dennis just immediately rolls a 6.
Yeah. At least they're not picking car keys out of a tin to decide who wins the car.
Yeah. So it's now time for the test. Johnny questions about the identity and actions of the mole. Whoever knows least goes home except for the mole who can never go home. And Dennis doesn't have to do the test because he has an exemption.
Why does he put the exemption really far into his pants?
Let's keep it safe from him.
Yeah. You never know what Sebastian's going to do.
Yeah. You don't know where he hid that €6,000, Saunders.
Yeah, nipple tweaker and exemption stealer.
Froukje doesn't know anymore. She thinks she knows and then challenges send her in different directions. Sebastian's being sent in a Rick tunnel. He answered nothing right, which made sure they didn't earn any money. The rest didn't really do much. Rick says the mole gave him no right answers in the game of the goose. Anik's mole is either John or Rick. They're the only two who could fool her. John says the mole started on the lowest point at the laser game. And Vivienne thinks that John's suspicious. He didn't know anything with the shishas. Pieter Jan says it was a long hot day which gave Dennis an exemption. The pot is now much stronger, €8,950, but it could have been over 15,000 if the missing money turned up. It is time for what he describes as the mandatory goodbye, and Sebastian volunteers to see his screen first.
I love that Pieter Jan is surprised that the missing €6,000 hasn't managed to show up at any point during an episode spanning multiple days and an intercontinental flight. He knows it's not going to turn up at this point, and he's just laughing at them.
And that's rude.
Yeah, he's a massive troll of a human being, and there's no better way to put him.
Yeah.
Sebastian's confident that his screen is green, and it is, unlike Froukje's, as she is sent home, and she says she saw so little of Jordan.
I mean, to be fair, we saw so little of her.
Yeah. There's 2 words that I can just hear on the wind, as if they were being shouted from a Jordanian minaret.
She gone.
Oh, I wish they would have had a Jordanian imam shouted on the speaker. Is there AI for that?
Unfortunately, I haven't discovered the Jordanian imam AI voice just yet. She says she guessed between 2 people and now she was worried it was neither of them. She spent the entire afternoon in jail looking over everyone and it didn't help. She was confident.
It was the nicest jail in all of Jordan.
I'm not sure it was because it was in direct sunlight in 40-degree weather.
And she's like, oh, I split on 2 people, but it must have been wrong. And then Pieter Jan's like, well, maybe you should have watched some more while you were in jail all afternoon. He's such a glorious asshole.
She says she split on 2 people and maybe both of them were wrong, and he's just like, yeah, maybe they were.
Probably. I mean, that's why you're executed, right? If one of them was right, you'd have half the questions answered correctly at least. And I mean, at this point, with 7 players, if you're executed, you probably scored less than half of the questions correctly. So, yeah, good deduction there, Froukje.
You dumbass.
Your crusade is over.
So next time, there are projections, taxis, chariots, and John sits behind a one-way mirror.
Oh, it is a Mr. Bean episode.
It is a Mr. Bean episode, yes.
I cannot wait for the chariot challenge.
Yeah, it's certainly one of those challenges that they could definitely do nowhere else.
Yeah.
Final 3 questions, Mr. Saunders. Who do you suspect? Who's going home? And who is that sneaky Belgian?
Well, Dennis brought in a lot of money, so I didn't really switch out any of my suspicions for this episode. Anik's still number 1, given she got shot early. She was very insistent in the shisha game, and she got those questions incorrect during the goose game. And I can't remember if it was Rick or Mr. Bean that said, Anik never brings in any money for the group, ever. Then I had Froukje as my number 2 suspect, but she gone. Then Sebastian for just all of the weird stuff he did in every challenge too. So I think that'll be a pretty consistent top 2 for me with Anik and Sebastian going forward. then Rick, then Vivian. Vivian, by the way, is still my secret Flemish. Then Dennis, then Mr. Bean, and next episode, I think Rick will go home.
Interesting.
Yes, quite.
Anything else you want to say?
No, I'm good.
I have nothing to say. No.
Good, right answer. In that case, thank you for listening to our VS Mole 2009 recap. We'll be back next week to continue the hunt for an old mole in Northern Ireland and Jordan. Don't forget you can contact us on pretty much every social media platform that isn't TikTok, where we are RTV Warriors, or you can email us and contact us at rtvwarriors.com. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/rtvwarriors and get early access to the rest of the episodes this season. Thank you as always to Marika for the subtitles, and we'll see you next week.
Peace out and just chill till the next episode.
This isn't what I meant when I was talking about Dennis and blowing.